Hey folks, what's going on? It's me, Andrew Westmoreland, back again with another stream. Why does this look so weird? It's also so low, so I'm like looking down at the camera. Alright, so I did a video earlier about the whole Supreme Court situation, and I do apologize for being 45 minutes late. I was watching something else, and I totally got sidetracked, so my apologies. Now, there's a lot of developments happening on Twitter. Actually, let's see if I can pull this up. The Supreme Court has issued a statement confirming the authenticity of the draft opinion revealed last night by Politico, and the Chief Justice has ordered an investigation into the leak. This is major news. This is major news. This absolutely undermines the democratic process and our republic, as I've said before. But let's read this. For immediate release, yesterday a news organization published a copy of a draft opinion in a pending case. Justices circulate draft opinions internally as a routine and essential part of the court's confidential deliberative work. Although the document described in yesterday's report is authentic, it does not represent a decision by the court or the final position of any member on the issues of the case or in the case. The problem with this is if they didn't or don't decide that this is the final decision, it again is another. People will just say, well, it's because it was leaked that now you change your decision, or the public pressure that is ongoing and continuing to escalate. You're probably going to have riots, probably nationwide riots, over this. Or just say, well, it wasn't our final decision, and then of course we're going to rightfully so blame what's been happening on that, on why they changed it. Now, Chief Justice John Roberts says, the hell? To the extent this betrayal of confidences in the court was intended to undermine the integrity of our operations, it will not succeed. Agreed. The work of the court will not be affected in any way. I doubt it. I doubt that's going to be true. We at the court are blessed to have a workforce, permanent employees and law clerks alike, intensely loyal to the instruction and dedication to the rule of law. Court employees have an exemplary and important tradition of respecting the confidentiality of the judicial process and upholding the trust of the court. This was a singular and egregious breach of trust that is an affront to the court and the community of public servants who work here. I have directed the marshal of the court to launch an investigation into the source of the leak. Now, again, I said this before, that I think it's interesting to note that the Supreme Court does have marshals. They do have a law enforcement body for the Supreme Court, but their powers are incredibly limited. I don't want to really get too much into that, but this is super important stuff. So, just scrolling through a lot of this. Okay, this is interesting. Heather Thomas said, a constitutional right has never been taken away in U.S. history. Oh, hold on one second. Sorry about that. It's 11:50. So, getting back to that tweet, a constitutional right has never been taken away in U.S. history. Well, abortion is not a constitutional right. Never has been a constitutional right. They're conflating a Supreme Court decision on a constitutional right. There is nothing in the Constitution that describes or talks about abortion. There are some vague or nebulous other things that you might be able to twist and weasel into describing it, but obviously there's no constitutional amendment about abortion or anything like that. I think it is, you are well within your rights as a people, and Congress and the states can pass a constitutional amendment describing abortion, whether for or against, but again, there's no right to have an abortion, at least constitutionally. Now, oof, he survived an abortion. This is Chuck Schumer talking about
for America.
What happened last night. I'm definitely interested.
This is a dark and disturbing morning for America. Last night, a report disclosed that a conservative majority of the United States Supreme Court is ready to overturn Roe v. Wade and uproot decades of precedent affirming a woman's right to an abortion.
50 years.
If this report is accurate, the Supreme Court is poised to inflict the greatest restriction of rights in the past 50 years, not just on women, but on all Americans.
I don't really... if you're a man, you don't have an abortion, a male, so I don't understand how that would affect all Americans. But anyway, let's go and look at trending. I think that's obvious. Number one trending is Roe v. Wade. Elizabeth Warren said an extremist Supreme Court is poised to overturn Roe v. Wade and impose its far-right, far-right unpopular views on the entire country. It's time for the millions who support the Constitution and abortion rights to stand up and make their voices heard. We're not going back, not ever. Okay, first thing, I don't understand how being against abortion is far-right. Conservatives and the right, have been against abortion for as long as that was a thing. Oh my God. There's an incompetent 16-wheeler driver. Acts like he doesn't know how to back up. Conservatives have been against abortion for pretty much forever, like I said, as far as there was ever a term of abortion. And today in 2022, they're still against abortion. So I'm not sure how they are far right. They've always been that. That's been a popular position even on Democrats 50 years ago. They typically were not, they didn't like it, but it was safe, legal, and rare. And then now it's just like, no, everyone should have an abortion and all this other crap. Unpopular views on the entire country. That's not, that she clearly doesn't understand what Roe v. Wade is. Roe v. Wade would not outlaw repealing or overturning the prior decision of Roe v. Wade would not ban abortions nationally. It only just puts it back up to the states to decide if abortion is legal or illegal in their state. Unpopular views on the entire country. Again, that is, I mean, what do you think Democrats do when they're trying to ban guns everywhere, like federally? Why would your city liberal politician or city liberal person who lives in a super tight urban environment, mega metropolises, why do they need to tell somebody who lives in the mountains or in the rural parts of the country that they can't have a weapon, whether it be for defense of self, property, or just because they want one? It makes no sense. So I don't really understand what that means. Then she also says millions who support the Constitution. Well, Democrats don't support the Constitution. They don't understand the Constitution. They clearly haven't read the Constitution if they think that abortion is included in the Constitution. It is not. It is not. Like, again, I said, if you want to make an amendment, well, you go through that process. Just like if you want to ban guns, go through that process. Repeal the Second Amendment if you don't like it. Well, they don't care about the Constitution. They're just talking shit. So, fuck Elizabeth Warren. Ed Markey, a stolen, illegitimate, and far-right Supreme Court majority. Far-right Supreme Court majority appears set to destroy the right to abortion. The federal government does that decision made no sense. First of all, the original Roe v. Wade made no sense. An essential right which protects the health, safety, and freedom of millions of Americans. Abortion's not health care, first of all. Murdering a human being is not health care. Now, you can argue there is such a thing as a medically necessary abortion, which is incredibly rare, in which the mother will die, because she gives birth. Okay, well, sometimes bad things happen, and I get that, and you should get that too, and understand that there are certain circumstances which just suck. The extreme of the extreme, the outlier of the outlier, a woman is raped, and she gets pregnant. Well, you're gonna force her to have a baby? It's like, I wouldn't use the term force, but I'm not gonna allow, or we should not allow, for the woman, the female, to murder the baby just because she's uncomfortable, or she, obviously it's a traumatic experience for her that she was forcibly raped and impregnated. But why would you take that out on an innocent human being? That makes no sense. The death penalty for someone who didn't rape you, and the innocent of an innocent, a baby child, it makes no sense. And they said there's no other recourse. We must expand the court. Of course they want to expand the court because they're losing. Anytime they lose, they want to change the rules. Just like in 2020 when they fortified the election, they admit it and put this huge, this big, article out. I believe it was Time magazine or just Time put out that article. Of course they want to do that. This is an interesting tweet. I'm seeing Roe v. Wade trending, and people are saying that the Supreme Court's taking away women's rights. Women's rights? Since when were you all biologists? Well, this is a 9-minute thing. I can't really play the audio. They'll just copyright me. Let's see. This one says, after more than 30 years in this business, I still don't understand how any lawyer can get on national television and argue with a straight face that overruling Roe v. Wade automatically makes abortions legal. Overruling Roe simply shifts the battle to states. Well, obviously. And here is a thing. Immediately, the states, as soon as Roe v. Wade is overturned, and I believe it's Casey, Planned Parenthood versus Casey, or something like that. It could be U.S. versus Casey. These are states that are automatically, they have it set in law already in their state. As soon as Roe v. Wade is overturned, that abortion is illegal in their state. Yeah, this stuff is just so obvious to me. And I think, again, a lot of people mistake that, or they don't understand the difference between legality, constitutionality versus ethics. What is in that tweet is ridiculous. Let me minimize that. They don't understand, like, a law does not necessarily mean it's ethical or moral. Okay, it could be procedural, or it could just be wrong. It could just absolutely be wrong. And abortion absolutely has been wrong. It's always been wrong. And we've just kind of pretended that it wasn't. We've ignored the tens of millions, of 30 million plus American babies that we have allowed to be murdered. Okay? But again, there's a difference between what's legal and what's ethical. There are plenty of laws that make things legal, but it doesn't mean it's ethical. Is the leak a crime? This just says, I don't think there is such a crime. There are criminal laws against leaking classified information, of course, but draft opinions are not classified. I would agree, unless there is something that's an obscure law in the books that I don't know about. I don't think that leaking this is a crime, though I would argue that it is highly unethical and incredibly damaging, and it should be a law to prevent this, or to be able to punish somebody for this, because again, you're undermining the basic fundamental institutions of this country. If you don't have a Supreme Court that is able to operate as it has always operated, in a way where it's not necessarily needs to be secret, but if you're going to put out a decision, it needs to go through the process, and the decision is made. And that's it. The Supreme Court is supposed to be a nonpartisan government body. It's not. It's not. We've been saying, like, oh, the left-wing Democrat appointed justices, the Republican appointed justices, all this other stuff for decades, if not much longer, well before I was born, I'm sure. And it's not supposed to be like that. Okay? This is undermining our republic. This Jennifer Rubin troll who pretends to be a conservative. But it doesn't underscore this. But it does underscore this is not a court. It's a partisan outfit out to enforce Christian nationalism. Well, I would agree that there are conservative factions who absolutely are Christian fundamentalists and Christian nationalists, and that's going to be the later segment in this stream where we talk about this, because there is this growing faction of primarily Gen Zers who believe in, are trying to push and advocate and enact a theocratic monarchy in America. They think that it should be like a Christian empire, Christian American empire. That we have a monarch, a king, or an emperor who is installed for life, and a monarchy, I would assume, the monarch's child, oldest child, then takes over afterwards. It's quite shocking. It's a quite shocking thing. Now, again, right now I'm just scrolling. I probably should go through some of the bigger... Let me see if we can get some bigger tweets. Top commentary. Oh, right. Biden just recently put out a statement. Biden's office... Biden's office put out a statement. I doubt Biden was able to coherently type this up, but it says, We do not know whether this draft is genuine. We do actually now, but this was before the Supreme Court commented, or whether it reflects the final decision of the court. With that critical caveat, I want to be clear on 3 points about the cases before the Supreme Court. First, my administration argued strongly before the court in defense of Roe v. Wade. We said that Roe is based on a long line of precedent recognizing the 14th Amendment's concept to personal liberty. It's interesting that you would use that argument but completely deny the existence of the other human that is fundamentally in this question of a pregnancy, and can you kill the other entity involved with this without due process? I think that's another huge part that nobody wants to talk about. Where was the due process rights for the unborn? Why the second you come out of a womb you have rights, but you didn't have rights before? Like literally 5 minutes before you're in the womb, well, you don't have rights, but the second you come out, you do. It doesn't make any sense. Anyway, it says, against government interference with intensely personal decisions, I believe that a woman's right to choose is fundamental. Roe has been the law of the land for almost 50 years, and basic fairness and the stability of our law demand that it not be overturned. Well, again, a Supreme Court decision is not a law. Let's be very clear about that. Roe has been the law of the land for 50 years. No, it has not. It was a Supreme Court decision. It was not a law. Democrats had 50 years to write a federal law saying that you have the basic right to abortion in all 50 states and territories. They didn't do it. Sorry, a decision could be reversed. Okay, you had that chance. You had 50 years to try it and do it. You had a super majority multiple times throughout those 50 years, and you didn't do it. You used it as a way to fire up your base every election. So fuck you. You lost. Move on. Now, the basic fairness and stability of our law demand that it not be overturned. Well, that's an opinion, of course. Second, shortly after the enactment of Texas Law SB 8 and other laws restricting women's reproductive rights, I strongly disagree with that language. I don't believe that abortion is a reproductive right. Again, because you're completely dismissing the second party. The most important party. The person who can't speak. The human being inside the womb, the unborn. Anyway, I directed my Gender Policy Council, that's creepy, and White House Counsel's office to prepare options for an administrative response to the continued attack on abortion and reproductive rights under a variety of possible outcomes in the cases pending before the Supreme Court. We will be ready when any ruling is issued. Third, if the court does overrule Roe, it will fall on our nation's elected officials at all levels of government to protect a woman's right to choose. And it will fall on the voters to elect pro-choice officials this November. At the federal level, we will need more pro-choice senators, a more pro-choice majority in the House to adopt legislation that codifies Roe, which I will work to pass and sign into law. Again, they had 50 years to do this, and now all of a sudden when they're losing, it's a problem. Just like the gay marriage thing that happened in, 2012? 2010? It's not a law. If they want gay marriage legal in all 50 states, it needs to be a law. There is no such federal law. So if the Supreme Court decides to overturn that, and null and void, now all the hundreds of thousands, I'm assuming hundreds of thousands of gay married couples are no longer married under federal law or under a federal court ruling. That could happen. They're going to freak out with that too. Well, it should have been a law. The Supreme Court doesn't make laws in America. Like, this should be obvious. Now, Axios says abortions could require 200-mile trips if Roe's overturned. Oh well, and so what? Absolutely, you should be inconvenienced from murdering human beings. I'm not going to feel bad about that. Before we keep going, I also want to say, this is a huge dividing line in America. This is probably the chief issue that could cause civil war. I've been talking about civil war for 3 or 4 years now, and the possibility of it, the high probability, actually. And I think now it's bubbling up to a point where There's just no living with each other. How can you live with people who don't see anything wrong with murdering their own children? How do you live with people who support people who murder their own children? And I'm past this, like, oh, let's be polite about it. Let's be diplomatic. It's like, no. There's nothing nice to say about this. Like, you either are for murdering your children, or think that it's okay to murder children, or you don't. And when I say murder, it's a very strong language, because what else do you call it? What else would you call this? Well, it's not human life. It's like, your arbitrary line of, oh, you passed through the womb, now you're a human being and you have rights, is, again, it's arbitrary, and you're not really getting to the root of the thing. What makes a person a person? What makes them a human being? What makes people have these basic innate rights? Now, there's a debate of, are you a human being if you're still a zygote and stuff like that? And, we could have that conversation, but generally speaking, it does not make sense. That 5 minutes before birth, you have no rights, and you can be terminated, you can be killed, murdered, in certain circumstances, certain locations. But the second you come out of the womb, now all of a sudden you have rights. And it's like, it literally makes no sense. Why didn't you just give birth to the baby? It could clearly survive outside of the womb, and just put it up for adoption. I don't understand this logic at all. Okay, let's keep going. Progressive lawmakers across Europe react with concern and surprise. Yeah, because y'all are far left. Oh, these are people freaking out last night.
Legalized abortion nationwide. News that quickly drew demonstrators outside the court late on Monday. That's after a draft opinion leaked by Politico on Monday suggested a majority of the court's justices.
Let's see. I'm trying to get some good stuff here, but it's really hard. Now let's listen to what Joe Biden has to say about the Roe decision.
What all basic mainstream religions have historically concluded, that the existence of a human life and being is a question. Is it at the moment of conception? Is it 6 months? Is it 6 weeks? Is it quickening, like Aquinas argued? I mean, so the idea that we're going to make a judgment that is going to say that no one can make the judgment to choose to abort a child based on a decision by the Supreme Court, I think goes way overboard.
Thank you.
What? That is entirely incoherent. That is incoherent. Roe says what a basic mainstream religions have historically concluded, that the existence of human life and being is a question. There is no question. Like, we exist. What measure or level of reality we're on is completely irrelevant as far as I'm concerned. I don't care if we're living in some a TV show or movie in some higher reality above us that watches us like entertainment. It doesn't matter. By our perspective, we exist. A baby exists. The baby inside of the womb also exists. It's not an argument. That's just totally incoherent. Like, this makes no sense, and I clearly can't spell. Let's see if we can get down and see some other ones. There's some funny tweets too. Alex Stein, the prolific troll, says, "I feel so sorry for all the trans women that can't get abortions now." And he put the little trans flag. Wah, wah, wah. This is a panel on abortion. It is 4 men talking about it. Okay. Paul just Watson said, "You're saying men can't get pregnant? Transphobe." Yep, that is a fair comment. Roe, this is interesting. Matt Walsh says, Roe was decided by 7 white men and overturned by a group that includes a woman and a black man. A major win for diversity. I mean, is he wrong? Stephen March is an author who talks about an upcoming civil war in America. His book, The Next Civil War. We're there, okay. We have 2 Americas. Any real thing you can bring up on any political conversation, if there is Democrat versus Republican, most people are staunchly opposed to it. Jack Posobiec says, interference in a Supreme Court decision is a blow to democracy, like, say, stopping an electoral vote. The conspirators must be rounded up and arrested and placed next to the J6 detainees. And I think he's being hyperbolic, but yeah, I mean, this is akin to like an insurrection. Like, you're completely breaking protocol and undermining the Republic by doing stuff like this. This is shocking. Absolutely shocking. A DEA but for birth. Not impossible. What? No one interacted with this? This is interesting. People lack imagination. I think that's a big problem right now in our country, is that people lack imagination. They really cannot come up with any new ideas. And they don't understand how things can go in a modern world because we're just stuck in our ways. And with that, I'm gonna stop sharing, and then we're gonna go directly into the next conversation here. Transitioning to the topic of modern monarchy and how the right wing, I guess we call them fringe right wing. They're definitely far right in the sense of they're the fringe right. They're authoritarian right wing. They're not necessarily fascists or anything like that. They are ultra-authoritarians, Orthodox Christians. They want theological monarchy. So a theocratic monarchy. Theocratic monarchy. In a theocracy, the power is in the hands of a deity or religious text. In a monarchy, the power is held by a ruling family or monarch. Now, theocratic monarchy is a mixture of the two. I would argue that most of the European monarchies back in the Middle Ages were theocratic monarchies. The church and the state were unified to some degree, a great degree in most cases, and it wasn't until, I believe, Henry VIII in England that broke that tradition. It was he was such a radical in the sense like he wanted to keep divorcing these wives, and the church was like, no, it's very, very rare, and even more so for a head of state, a monarch, to divorce a wife is just it went against their religion, right? It was heresy, sacrilegious. But this concept of a modern monarchy in America, I watched this video yesterday. Well, it was a live stream of a guy called Modern Monarchy on YouTube. He has about 1,000 followers. He's Gen Z age, so early 20s. I would say he's far right. He's definitely a religious fundamentalist, and he does not believe in gay rights or any of that stuff. He doesn't believe in diversity. On almost every position you can think of, he would probably be considered an extremist. I would say he had some good points, but I think ultimately my libertarianism always kicks in, and it's like I can never really support this. There's a part of me, like in the back of my mind, that says, yeah, it'd be kind of cool to see what that would look like in America. But I would only support that as far as it's not forced upon me, right? So if a state decides to do it, let's say Connecticut, New Hampshire, I don't know, Pennsylvania decides that they want to become the Kingdom of Pennsylvania or something like that. Okay, great. I have no problem with that. I think that, the entire point of the United States of America, people still do not understand that America is supposed to be, it's essentially the United Countries of America. States means countries, the United Countries of America. Each state is supposed to be its own country, with the general understanding that we're united under a greater flag for the common defense and upholding basic rights. Everything that is not included in the Constitution then trickles down to each state, and they can make their own laws for it. That's why you have radically different cultures and laws in the South to the Midwest, to the Midwest to the North. All these different things. They're very different regions. And I've been arguing for a long time now, again, years, that America is absolutely fractured into 4 or 5 different regions. And if this civil war does happen, you would probably fracture even more, or at least politically, geographically on paper, officially, we would have 4 or 5 separate nations, because this is just not tenable, right? I think at first it's a dramatic left-right, like conservatives versus liberals. But when you start working at that, you start to understand that there's all these different factions in politics right now. You have the Democrats and the Republicans, the general ones, the ones that are in like any kind of institutional power, do not fit the same mold politically as those in the Gen X, Gen Y, and Gen Z. We don't care about those people. They're old fogies, right? They're baby boomers, okay? They are ancient, 70s, 80s, 90s, and they're trying to tell us what we should be doing in this modern era. And I said this before, like, if California becomes its own country and it wants to pass the most insane laws, the most depraved type of laws that are just, debauchery and, anything goes, and just horrible things against children, because it's like, oh, it's fine, they consent because they're whatever. Like, it's like, okay, sure. I am of the opinion I am not going to interfere with that, because that is their country. Just like I don't care, I care, but on a human basic level, I care. But I'm not going to be one of these people that says, we should send in troops to California, the California Republic, a separate country, because they're allowing adults and children to interact in inappropriate ways. That's their laws. It's their country. Just like, I don't want to interfere with Afghanistan or any of these other countries. That's none of my business. So to me, again, a theocratic monarchy in America, how would that look like in 2022? I mean, I would say initially it would be rough. It would be really weird. Again, let's just use Pennsylvania as an example. If Pennsylvania decided to become a monarchy, a theocratic monarchy, and the country, whatever, let's just say the conditions were already right to where that was possible, and they're forming a government, what would it look like? I don't know. You would have to, I would imagine there would be people, they would probably have some initial election. They would pick their monarch. Some kind of Christian fundamentalist religious leader. Charismatic, strong, wealthy. It's typically how that stuff works. I think it's shocking. I think it's terrifying. But the question is, what it could look at any measure of ways getting there. Are you voting on it, or is it only elites, the rich, the already people in the political class that have a say in this? Or, that kind of determines the legitimacy of something as extreme as this. As you want to revert back to a theocratic monarchy, like, that's scary. Assuming they figure it out, however, and you have a theocratic monarchy in place, well, then what happens? I mean, all you have to do is look at Saudi Arabia and Iran. They're really good examples of this. Like, how do they treat dissidents? How do they treat people who break the law? How do they treat people who break their spiritual laws? Well, it's brutal, like absolute brutality. There is no real nuance here, right? If you are found guilty of a crime, the punishments are always swift and severe. There isn't this, let's draw it out a couple years of court proceedings. It's, you have been accused of this crime. You may have a couple hours to prepare. You may have a couple of days at best to prepare. And 9 times out of 10, if you've been credibly accused by, someone of a higher status than you, you are screwed. You are screwed 9 times out of 10, probably even more than that. Probably even a higher percentage. You would see a totally different society, that's for sure. You wouldn't have the moral depravity openly and publicly in the streets, but what would that do towards progress of other things? I don't know. I don't know. I've argued for as long as I can remember, since probably I started thinking about politics late, the end of middle school, beginning of high school, that we would already be traveling the stars had it not been for the Catholic Church, and I mean that wholeheartedly. And a lot of people are like, wow, they're gonna freak out, but that's me. I feel like the Catholic Church held us back, that they stifled progress. Hundreds of years of progress in the Dark Ages. Instead of trying to work on a balance, because that's what I've always been about, is balance. I don't want one extreme to another. Okay, I don't want a world where there's no rules and you can do literally whatever you want without consequence. It doesn't. You can't have a society like that. That's anarchy. It's chaos. Where you can just change definitions of words whenever you want, and say that, project negativity on somebody who actually believes in some semblance of order. Well, now males are women and females are men now, and children do drag shows and can have life-altering permanent surgeries, cosmetic surgeries, all these different things, take hormones and chemicals that prevent them from ever having children. All these different things are happening. The school system is teaching pornographic material to small children. all these different things are happening that would not happen on a theocratic monarchy, but one extreme to the other. I like the balance of what it was in like the 90s and 2000s. You had some liberalism, some progressivism, obviously, but people for the most part agreed on baseline reality. We understood that there were lines. There was such a thing as too far. If you were a religious fundamentalist and you were beating gay people to death for simply existing, that was a problem. Nobody liked that. Most people didn't like that. Conversely, if you were what would be something that's different? If you are on the left advocating for banning guns, like, everybody would laugh at you back in the 90s and 2000s. Like, that, you're crazy. They're akin to like PETA or, you know, some of these extremist environmentalist groups, who it's like, yeah, like, some people care about it and might sympathize, but they're not going to. Hello, Lance Corporal veteran. My point is, we had a semblance of balance in the 90s and 2000s, where it was like a pretty good fit. Like, maybe we could have done better in some things, but you had the left were able to do leftist things within reason, and the right were able to do rightist things within reason. Okay? And there was a decent balance. Now it's gone the complete other direction, where the left has all this power, institutional power, and they're literally creating chaos, where you can just make something up, and then force everyone else around you to believe in that ideology. It makes no sense. The right never really did that, as far as I can tell. Now, I remember the televangelists were a definite annoyance in the 90s, in the 2000s, early 2000s. They started waning, for sure. But I don't remember this big institutional push where conservatives just owned everything and everything was being censored. And yeah, we had some issues, right? I remember some conservative factions were trying to censor art and say, like, oh my God, you know, that there's a naked statue. Like, we got to cover this up. The kids can't see it. And it's like, bro, it's a 500-year-old statue. Like, relax. Now, this is an interesting point. I've heard this kind of talked about, and I'm assuming it has to do with the recent Roe v. Wade thing. Lance Corporal veteran says, do you think it's worth losing an election to win a moral point? It's like winning the battle but losing the war. The conversation was that because the conservative Supreme Court is doing this now, right before the midterms, it's possible that women freak out and they are succumbed to the propaganda of the left and far left and think that women are losing rights somehow. I don't really know how killing is a right, but murder is a right, but it is possible that it could reduce the Republican landslide that was projected. I think that is a big possibility. The problem here is, if the left overreacts, it might counteract that effect, right? If they just stuck to actual protests and, you know, politicians and stuff were pushing this, like, oh my God, they're taking away our constitutional rights, even though there is no constitutional right to an abortion. Never mind that fact. If they just keep lying about it and push the propaganda and stuff like that, they had a chance. But if Antifa and BLM and these radical feminist groups start rioting in the streets, even more so, it'd be interesting. What happens if they start rioting at the Supreme Court and try to do a J6 scenario and break in? Well, that's an insurrection, right? Now, we know how this works. If they were to do that and try to riot in front of the Supreme Court and actually try to break in, or actually do get in, they will not be treated the same as the J6 people. Okay, they will not be in solitary confinement, and we know that we do not have equal treatment under the law. We are living under a Democrat tyranny right now, primarily Democrat. But I think it's interesting for sure. I think it's interesting because people of logical, rational mindset, people who have a basic code of ethics, okay? Whether it be moderate, centrist, conservatives, whether you're religious, agnostic, even atheist, people who are in this camp that are not on the left and far left, we kind of agree on a lot of things because we've been forced into an alliance, essentially. We've been forced into an alliance to work with each other. But I do think that it could mean that conservatives are going to lose. I don't know. We're just gonna have to see. We're gonna have to see where this goes. And I'm hoping that we have the ability to maybe change a lot that's been happening and figure this out. But honestly, I really do. We're past the point of no return. I cannot see any, short of some kind of cosmic miracle, right, where a unifying threat. I don't even think war, like international war, is going to stop this, right? If it seems like Democrats are really pushing hard to go to war with Russia, which would be World War III. I don't think that'll unify. If anything, that'll separate us even more, because conservatives right now, like 80 to 90% of conservatives and people who are looking at this stuff are just like, no, we're not going to war with Russia. Like, what? I didn't vote for this. Like, hell no, of course not. This is insanity. It's going to polarize us even more, but I feel like we're in a I don't know if quagmire is the right word, but it's like an impossible situation. I don't know how we get out of it. Like, again, short of some kind of unifying threat, like alien invasion, an asteroid is coming, or, you know, we figure out some kind of light speed travel, or something that is just so groundbreaking that there's just, it's just like, why even fight about it? I don't think we're going to avoid a civil war. I really do think it's coming. And I've talked about that, you know, at length over the years. Now, you also said, I don't know if the left overreacting will prevent them from influencing their public, or influencing the public to their side, or cause them to lose the election. Remember, 2020 violence has become politics, of course. Again, when you control the institutions, and as we learned in 2020, they'll just fortify the elections to make sure that they win. And that's not to be confused with rigging the election. I mean, the outcome is the same, but legally speaking, it's like, yeah, there was like peppering of election fraud here and there, but generally speaking, by all indicators, all public knowledge and record that we have so far shows that it was basically they changed the laws and the rules, and they fucked around in ways that basically got Democrats to win by trickery and fuckery. And yeah, they fortified the election to make it to where Republicans lost. Well, yeah, I mean, if you just keep changing the rules every time you're losing, or anytime there's a threat of you losing, well, yeah, you're gonna keep winning. So I'm past the point of like national elections, like they're fake. Like there's no point. You know, you have these big organizations, whether it be Democrat or Republican, and then you have all these other, you know, big institutions, corporations, and international influence that sway these national elections. It's just, well, why are we voting for this? Like, we clearly have no say or power in this. And the threshold is to buy yourself in, right? Well, we need somebody, an outsider. Well, we did that, right? We had an outsider who bought his way in, Donald Trump, who wasn't really involved in politics most of his career. He was mostly just involved in business, but he was a celebrity businessman. And we saw what happened, right? Because he was an outsider and because he was trying to change the establishment way, you saw how they treated him. There is a price to become president. It's just most of us can't afford it. You know, if Elon Musk was a natural born citizen of America, he could easily buy his way into the White House, buy his way in. But you know what I mean, right? He has the celebrity status to do it, and he would easily win. He would win more than Trump would, in my opinion. Look up 1857. The epidemic was ending. The Crimean War was coming to a close. A global economic panic was being felt in the United States. An election was upcoming. Also, Dred Scott case divided the nation. And that's kind of my point too. Is there are a lot of indicators like that. That's like we are dangerously close to civil war, and you know, a lot of people say like history repeats itself, but it's more like history's a cycle. It's obviously not directly repeating itself, but exactly the same. But there are these cycles where history tends to be more. History tends to go through these cycles where things are very, very similar in a repeating pattern, and it's really fascinating to me. It's really fascinating. It makes you start to question this, thinking that there might be a mathematical design to this universe, which I think is highly probable. He said, meanwhile, it's 1857. Okay, I think you already said that. Yeah, you did. He said, tell me history does not repeat. Yeah, it does to a degree. Like, it definitely goes through these cycles. And I think that if we start recognizing that, I mean, that's why they always taught me in school, like, you know, never forget your history lest you're doomed to repeat it. And I guess these current generations don't remember that. Like my generation and the generation after me, Gen Z, don't understand that. Like they don't understand history at all. And I'm definitely not a huge history person. I am not a big history person. I really wish I had more time. Well, I do have time, but I dabble in things. But I look at it, and yeah, and I definitely see the indicators. Is like, of course we could have another civil war, and people, oh, that'll never happen. Well, they're like, what are the dividing lines going to be in a second civil war? And it's like, it's pretty easy. It's pretty obvious. It's you'll have the main regional areas, right? You'll have the main regional areas. The Northeast, absolutely, will be its own faction. Absolutely. The South will be weird because even in the black community in the South, they're way more conservative than you would think. Yeah, they vote Democrat, but they are conservative, socially conservative. If you ask black people about gay rights and gay marriage and stuff like that, especially in the South, they're going to be a lot more conservative than you would think in these like city areas, these big mega metropolises. So there are dividing lines, but it's mostly going to be cities versus everyone else, the way I see it. And, you know, there's going to be suburbs, right? But the suburbs is where it gets weird, is because people are going to be... that's the melting pot. You know, everyone knows that the rural area is conservatives, the cities are liberals, but the suburbs, you know, you live right next door to rednecks and these like college educated master degree, you know, people who are in the scientific field and stuff like that, right? It's gonna get weird. It'll get weird for sure. But I think the cities are gonna be a huge problem going forward, and even the rural areas, because we're also talking about a numbers game. You know, who has more people? I mean, you can argue that. I don't know. I would argue the cities are a threat for sure, because they can just be like, oh, we're going to send 1 million people from the city to go clean out the rural area, 5, 10, 20 miles away from us. They're giving us problems. It'll be regional. I don't think we're going to have this big national thing, but it's going to have this wider conversation where people are like, listen, I don't want to fight you. I don't want to kill you. I don't want to have to raise my guns to you. Just how about you be your own country, we'll be ours. And I think that's going to really spawn, that's really going to be a growing conversation. And it already is. People have been talking about this for years. And now, as the divide continues, people are just like, we need national divorce. Like, we can't survive like this. And I think that's a way to avoid total ruin, complete and total ruin. Imagine a scenario where Texas can be its own country. It might ally with neighboring. I don't know. They've always kind of been their own thing. Imagine Texas being its own country and it actually can control its border. They will immediately build walls around the entire state and they will police them. They will put troops and law enforcement on the border, and they can actually do something about it. So when the people in these liberal states, liberal countries, if we start trying to flood in, it's like, well, they're like, no, you're not coming in. We're not coming in, dude. I mean, versus the liberal states, like, what are they going to do? They don't believe in anything. They just believe in chaos. Let them burn themselves out. Cut them off financially. You are your own country. Fuck off. And let them collapse. And when they collapse, they can be folded into the new paradigm. The new way of doing things. But I think that's a problem, right? These people are leeches. The left, the far left, they are leeches. They are parasites. They absolutely only exist because they are able to feed off of everyone else who is, again, moderate, centrist, or conservative. Because I think it's just really interesting. Like, the older I get, the more I learn, the more I absorb information, the more clear things get. And it's like, there's a difference between 90s Democrats, 90s liberals to 2022. Totally different thing. If you were to put them side by side, the 90s Democrats to the 2022 Democrats, they would just say, like, these people are crazy. They're insane. Like, they are extremists. And, the 2022 Democrats would be like, oh, these 90s Democrats, they're far right. It's like, what? What do you mean they're far right? Let's see. I will say this about the Supreme Court. DC in general, any major city, right? If you are in a major city, stay home. Stay home tonight. Stay home probably for the next week and just watch the news. Watch local news. Watch national news to see what's going on. Especially in DC, I highly anticipate riots tonight. Last night there wasn't riots because it was like immediate, right? So 8:30 or something p.m. it dropped. So it didn't give people time to organize. They have time now. So expect thousands, tens of thousands to be at the Supreme Court tonight. In fact, is there a live feed of the Supreme Court protests? I'm sure they're protesting right now. Is there anything that's happening right now? Maybe Twitter, SCOTUS, live. Is there anything happening right now? Live stream. I highly I think the risk is high. Definitely avoid DC, avoid the Supreme Court building, obviously. I was also tweeting earlier. Understand that abortion is the flagship of Democrat policies. That is their baby. When they got abortion as a codified right, well, not codified, but a right by default because of the Supreme Court decision Roe v. Wade, that was like their crowning achievement. And now that looks like that is going away, and it's going back to states to decide, do not think that they're not going to completely lose their minds, worse than when Donald Trump was elected. I expect domestic terrorism attacks, like low-level attacks, people who are able to get low-level explosives to just start blowing shit up. Like, and I mean that in all seriously and sincerity. This is not a good time to be in the federal government right now, working in a federal office, specifically relating to courts, Supreme Court. They're gonna have to raise their security for sure. I would have called the National Guard. Seriously, as soon as that thing leaked, I would have immediately called the National Guard. Immediately. Because it's such a major issue to them. It would be like if they said that the Supreme Court said, "Oh, we're banning guns. The Second Amendment is unconstitutional," which makes no sense. But let's just say hypothetically something to that degree, where they'd be like, "Oh, guns are banned." Well, it would just be like automatic, like it's war. It's a wrap. In fact, the Democrats are saying that. They said this is war. This isn't a declaration of war against us. They're taking away our rights, and they're literally calling for war. So be concerned about that. But also understand these are Democrats. Yeah, you have Democrats who served in the military, but these are Democrats. Most of them don't understand guns. They will use low-level Antifa style violence. They will beat, they will kick, they will punch, they will stab. Occasionally they will shoot, but they're not very good at it. And it's not very widespread as far as, using effective focused violence. Or I should say devastating focused violence. They're not really good at that. So it depends how bad it gets. Remember when they keep saying our democracy for everything these days? Yeah, they were like, oh, this is an affront to our democracy, and they're attacking our democracy. J6 they're trying to undermine the democracy. Yeah, of course. Well, what are they doing now? Yes, absolutely. Save our, yep. And that's what I was saying too. I was just like, wait a minute. So somebody leaked this. As soon as I heard that it was leaked, I thought it was just like, oh, it's official. Like, no, someone leaked it. And I was like, wait. It took me a while, but I was thinking about it. I was like, wait a minute. They leaked a draft of this decision about 2 months before it was expected to drop. Okay, well, that gives the psychopaths 2 months to riot and cause the biggest storm they could possibly make, to exert pressure on the Supreme Court to change that decision, because it's not final yet. Another possibility that you should consider, what happens, or I would say there is a higher probability than not that somebody is going to start taking pot shots at Supreme Court justices, that they're going to start trying to do something to them, assassination attempts. I know the government is already taking that in consideration. There's such a huge thing that's happening right now. It is probably one of the biggest legal moments of the decade that'll have the biggest impact. So I know they're talking about security and trying to figure that out. So Don't be surprised. Some random anti-V people or just somehow they'll dock Supreme Court justices or figure out where they're going or where they're at and just, start taking pot shots at them. It's not about yours or mine, it's about theirs. Absolutely. That's what they believe in. There's no truth but power. And they're a democracy that they've built for the past 50 years, yes. Well, it's their democracy. It's only a democracy for the left, right? Within the Democrat circles, within the left-wing circles, they're allowed to vote on things. But if you are not closely aligned with them, you don't get a voice in their system. And it's increasingly becoming that. If it's not already a law or something that they have done to fortify the elections, they do it socially, with social pressure, where any deviation from their norm, you are labeled an outcast, essentially. I mean, it is, people just like, I've seen this. They lose their mind. They're like, whoa, completely flabbergasted when they hear that there are Christian conservatives that don't believe in gay marriage. But it's a right. It's like, it's the Supreme Court ruled on it. It's like, yeah, well, some people don't believe in that, dude. The religion says it's a sin. It's very obvious. Marriage is between a man and a woman. Most major religions say that. Why is it so shocking to you that a large portion of Christians, specifically conservatives, are not really comfortable with the concept of gay marriage? Like, these are just obvious things, but to them they're just so out of touch. They don't watch news, a diversified news diet. They don't talk to people of other political persuasions. They're stuck in their own little bubbles, their own little elitist bubbles, and it's like sealing yourself in a room and just farting constantly, and you're breathing in your own gases and whatever, but you're not getting that fresh air. You're not seeing the sunlight or something. You just start echoing this what is it called, like a spiral, when like a depression spiral. If you don't have, you start to feel a little down, so you're like, well, maybe I won't go outside, maybe I won't answer the phone, maybe I won't hang out with this person, and you lay in bed and it just starts getting worse and worse and worse. That's Democrats. That's the left and the far left. They refuse to listen to other ideas because they know that what they are proposing is not tenable 9 times out of 10. So let's see, is there anything new? I don't think so. I don't think there's anything really new here. Here's an interesting quote from Ronald Reagan. I've noticed that everyone who is for abortion has already been born. I mean, God, what's Whoopi Goldberg saying? I already know she's freaking out. Hold on, let me share my screen just so you can see the nonsense that I'm looking at. If it's not your body, it's not your decision. Okay. Well, I don't get a say in anything really, because, and you don't either, right? You don't get to tell me what I do with my body, and I don't get to tell you what you do with your body. The difference is, it's different because, like you telling me I have to get a vaccine, whether or not I have or not is irrelevant. It's my body, it's my choice. You don't get to tell me to do that. We're not talking about the same thing because you're talking about a separate human life that's growing in your womb. That's not your body. That's a separate human entity that you don't get to just kill and murder because it's an inconvenience to you. Fuck off. I'm sick of these people. Here we go.
Body. You know, at all. But I will tell you, this is my body, and nobody, you know, you got people telling me I gotta wear a mask or don't wear a mask or do this. Everybody wants to tell me what to do, but you won't let me make my decision about my body. You are not the person to make that decision. My doctor and myself and my child, that's who makes the decision. And one of the things I really want to point out before we go is the reason abortion came about. Women in this country lived forever with it being illegal, okay? Women, when they decide something is not right for them, they're going to take it into their own hands. Well, we got tired of tripping over women in bathrooms, public bathrooms, who were giving themselves abortions because there was nowhere safe, nowhere clean, nowhere to go. This law came about because people wanted people to have somewhere safe and somewhere clean. It has nothing to do with your religion. This is not a religious issue.
Yes, it
this
is
a human issue.
It's
if you
entirely
care about
religious.
me as a human being, you should know three things. Getting an abortion is not easy. Making that decision is not easy. It's not something people do lightly. It's not something that you can just do. It is a hard, awful decision that people make. And if you don't have the wherewithal to understand that, to start this conversation with, I know how hard this must be for you. If you're starting it by telling me I'm going to burn in hell, then you're not looking out for me as a human being, whether I subscribe to you or not.
right. They're literally looking out for you, right? So here's the thing. Here's a strange thing that these atheists, far leftists don't understand. Yes, the Christian conservatives are looking out for you when they say you're going to burn in hell. They are. They're literally looking out for you. They don't want you to burn in hell. They don't understand this. They think that it's like an attack on you, like they want you to burn in hell. Maybe some do, people who don't understand Christianity, who don't understand the Bible. But the righteous ones, they understand that they're warning you. They're saying, hey, what you're doing is evil, and it's against, it's affront to God. This is a sin. This is a grave violation. You're murdering your own baby. You're going to burn in hell. Yes, they're trying to help you.
And that is not okay. We will be right back.
I mean, listen, How do I even address that? Like, what he was just saying was just factually incorrect. Amazing how it was Sargon and Tim Pool, both atheists, who were the first ones I heard who pointed out that this was a religion, not just political. I can't speak for Sargon, but I know Tim Pool is not an atheist. He's agnostic. He believes in a God. He just does not subscribe his particular religion to it. Heard of Sargon calling it a religion, but I don't really watch him anyway. I heard Tim Pool talking about it, but I actually heard about it around the same time he started talking about it. And I'm trying to remember the guy who said it. He's some kind of author, political commentator. He's not like a personality. He's just one of these analyst people who talks about stuff like this. And he definitely got it from that guy talking about how the leftism is now becoming a religion, wokeism. I did a whole video on it, a whole stream. It's a pandemic of child sacrifice. It's a health issue. I don't know that I would call it a health issue, though. I absolutely do think this is a religious issue. Now, spiritual, I don't even know I could take the spirituality part out of this, because the left and far left have made a religion, as Lance Corporal Veteran said, that they have this whole wokeism religion, and abortion is part of their religion. I don't know that I would call it their communion or something, or like a baptism. That that's probably like highly offensive. But there is a place for abortion in their religion, just like, Fauciism, combined with the wokeism of the far left. Wearing the mask is like wearing a cross. Getting your vaccines was like communion. All that kind of stuff. Social distancing was like praying 5 times a day or something. Like, you could talk about all of these different things, how it's very similar to a religion, and it's like basically a newly formed religion. Tim Pool is recently agnostic. I guess I've never heard him say anything that he was an atheist. I've been watching him since Occupy Wall Street. He was the first person live streaming ever, really, on the ground, a regular person. Yeah, and I was watching him way back then. So, I don't even know what year that was. 2009, 2010, I guess. Dude had like 1,000 followers. Like, I'm one of the OG Tim Pool followers, so it's funny. Now the dude's like a multi-millionaire and doing great. And good for him. But let's see. Leviticus 20, do not sacrifice your child to Moloch. That's the other thing too, is like, yeah, there's this spiritual religious component to abortion, to where if you start looking at who these abortionist doctors are, and a lot of the organizations that provide the abortions, you start having these questions. Now, for me, a lot of this stuff is conspiracy theory, and people are stretching, like they're stretching miles away trying to connect the dots. But I am not an atheist, and I do believe that there are gods. I do believe that there are angels. I do believe that there are demons. I believe there are demonic gods. And there are powers that people do not understand. I have seen a lot of supernatural things in my life that I could not easily explain with science or physics. Things that just didn't make sense to my rational, semi-intelligent mind. Things that were not replicatable. So yeah, it's possible, it's probable. But when you look at, I would even slightly separating the spirituality or the religious part of this, I would say that if you look back in history, the societies that like did human sacrifice and killed babies, they eventually ended in ruin and collapse, because that was a symptom. That was one of the horrible, atrocities they were doing. There was a whole slew of other ones. They had complete moral and ethical decay. Societal, cultural collapse was inevitable. Rome had issues like that. They did kill babies too. There were places in Greece that killed their own babies. Now, we also need to separate that from, just general killing of infants and babies. I believe it was Sparta. They would kill the weak ones and the deformed ones. So if you were born with a major birth defect, some major problem, they would throw you over the cliff. Now, generally speaking, they weren't just killing everybody. Like population control, they wanted the strongest and the best. Okay, sure. But generally speaking, societies that kill off their children don't last very long. And I would say that here in America, the fact that we've allowed abortion for 50 years, and we've killed, I would say 30 million based on the basic numbers I looked at, was the official reports, but you could double that potentially. So, anywhere from 30 to 60 million babies. I mean, that's just genocide levels. Like, you've annihilated an entire nation. You've annihilated an entire nation, a whole generation. More than multiple generations. You've killed 3 generations of children in America. 30 to 60 million deaths. And I always find it strange, like the people who argue in defense of abortion, it's really hard for me to understand you anymore. There's a lot of whataboutism. Well, what about this super rare, obscure situation? And I'd say, what about it? Well, you still allow the woman to have an abortion in this circumstance. And I'm like, I used to be like, oh, sure, like that doesn't mean anything. And now I'm just like, no. And it's not easy. It's not an easy thing to talk about, because if you're in that situation, and I've been married to my wife for 10 years, we're in our 30s now, we're starting our 30s, and we just decided to have a family, or we're financially together, and she's like 6 months pregnant, and then there's a major complication. If she gives birth to this baby, she will die. Should I get an abortion? I'd say no. No. My wife, the love of my life, my spiritual counterpart, is going to die. I'm sorry. It sucks. It sucks. But that baby had nothing to do with your choices. Had nothing to do with... Sometimes bad things happen. It's a complete innocent, total innocent. The purest thing on this planet is a newborn human baby. Well, I mean, of any species, really, but it hasn't done anything wrong. It can't possibly have done anything wrong. It doesn't know anything other than to exist. And killing it to save someone else's... I can... It does not make sense to me. A society that does not value its children, its future generation, more than the people who are already here, people who have already had a taste of life, is not going to last. And further, I would argue a parent should automatically want their children, their offspring, to survive above them. Imagine how selfish that must be. Okay, well, it's in the womb, right? So it's different than when it's out, right? So once it's born, something happens psychologically too, where you would basically imprint on the child, and it's like, it's different than being in the womb. I get that. But for me, this idea that you're not treating your child, even if it's unborn, as your progeny, the future of your family, your genetic material, should be protected at all costs, even if that means you die. I understand a lot of people aren't on that page, and they're like, well, no, whoever's here. I used to be on that camp. Whoever's here first, the people have already established here take precedent, and I can't think like that anymore. Like, it just doesn't make sense. It's hard, but I can't support that. Can't support abortion. Let's see, is there anything else going on? Go back. Why is Bush trending? Roe v. Wade is still trending. Show me the best of the best. A lot of this is really old. This person says, of course Roe v. Wade gets overturned now that us guys can get pregnant. He's got Clown World thing in his profile. Elizabeth Warren in the filibuster. Codify Roe v. Wade with a national law protecting abortion rights. Expand the Supreme Court. Stop this horrifying injustice in its tracks. I mean, if we start doing this, right, we haven't done this before in history where we've expanded the Supreme Court. If we start now, the Supreme Court is going to be a panel of like 100 judges in like 50 years, because every time somebody gets into power, a different party, they're just going to keep adding justices. They're just going to keep adding and adding and adding. Well, we're going to change the law. Now we're going to add 3 more. Oh, we're going to add 2 more. Oh, we're going to add 4 more. It'll never stop. It's one of the glaring holes of the Constitution. The founding fathers, as smart and intelligent as they were, they did not get it right, and we absolutely should have had term limits for the Supreme Court. I've said that forever, since high school, 20 years ago. I was saying like a 10-year term limit for Supreme Court. Two consecutive terms for Congress and the Senate. And I've been stretched to, you could pull my arm and say that you take one term off and then you can run again for the same cycle. And basically you have to allow new people to come in at some point. Presidency, again, is fine with 2 terms, and then that's it. There's just some things that are so powerful that this idea that you need them for life is terrifying to me. And I've heard arguments on both sides. Maybe it's good to have the Supreme Court that is for life. It helps keep them nonpartisan and all this other stuff. And, you're basically not electing Supreme Court justices. I feel like there are things that we could try, because what we're doing right now is not working. It's absolutely not working. A lot of this is stuff I've already seen. That is a butt. Thank you, Twitter, for not having sensitive content warnings. Yeah, a lot of this is not new. And this is sacrilegious and frankly offensive. He who hath not a uterus should shut the fucketh up. Philippians 13:13. That's cute, but alright, I think that's it. I am going to cut this off. I have exhausted everything I can really say about this at the moment. Let me finish this one up. They say it's to prevent bias, corruption, by not giving incentives to win elections in the Supreme Court. Right. I'm just not sold on that argument. I think there are ways to do it. I think we need to have, like, every 100 years we need to refresh the Constitution. And the thing with that for me is there are ways to do it to where you're not completely redoing and scraping off all of the rights because this one political party is in power. It would need like a mega majority for it to pass. It would need like 90% of government to sign off on this, on these changes, of elected officials. And I think it would need to be a referendum for the nation. Okay. Every 100 years, the American people get to vote on constitutional amendments. I think the base part of the Constitution doesn't really need to be modified necessarily, but I think there needs to be subtext. So the problem with the amendments is it's all one thing. I think there needs to be the main text, and then there below it in a subtext, like smaller font or whatever, it needs to have definitions explaining it, paragraphs. This is specifically what this law means. The right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Well, in order to to ensure a well-regulated militia, the rights of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Okay, that's great. That's short and sweet, but that means, anyone can have a gun for any reason, as long as it's not to harm another person without just cause. You are allowed to have a gun whenever you want, wherever you want, with no limitations. That's what it should say, because it says the right to keep and bear arms should not be infringed. It should say that as a subtext. This is exactly what this means. It cannot be misinterpreted. That's the problem with the Constitution. It's too vague. When you see people trying to get their people into any branch, it shows that the government has too much power. Yes. How do I say this? I am very opposed, like strongly opposed to direct democracy. However, it's going to be hard to convince me that having more people voting on a thing is bad. But you can just change the threshold. Like if 75% of America cannot agree on something, okay, well, it doesn't pass. It doesn't pass. I think that's fair. That way, it lessens the chance of a tyranny of a majority, right? Oh no, 51% gets to change 49%'s lives for generations to come. It's like, no, it should be a supermajority that decided that. So, like the Roe v. Wade thing, the second that Roe v. Wade was enacted, Congress should have had a vote to make it a federal law, whether this is this a thing that we want, or is this something we don't want. And it needs a supermajority. I think that's fair. That's it. That's all I have today. I really need to look into this modern monarchy thing. This theocratic monarchy is fascinating. It terrifies me, but it's very fascinating. Because I'm curious just how many people are in this faction who are trying to push this in America. I need to know what's going on in my country. They could potentially be a problem because they're literally talking about, well, under our system, all these LGBTQ people would be executed, and I'm like, oh, that's great. So we're gonna have they want a Saudi Arabia and an Iran and all that shit here in America. I'm like, no thanks. I'm not okay with that. What I will say again, just repeat myself, if a state has a supermajority and they agree on changing their, becoming a separate nation, and they decided they wanted a theocratic monarchy, I'm okay with that. But a nationwide one, no. I will go to war. I will use violent force to defend what we have here now today. So that's it. That's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching. If indeed you still are, then I will see you all next time.